88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Weekends. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Weekends, as well as the accompanying previous show that comes before What to Watch Weekends in the week, What to Watch Wednesdays. I think I kind of like the way that I introduced that, although it was kind of long-winded. But long-winded is not what our show is going to be tonight. We are going to be covering multiple movies. But unfortunately, it is just going to be me, or fortunately, depending on how much you like hearing my voice. If you like hearing my voice, don't worry. It is a fortunate thing. I should have said more so. I guess, as a caveat, tonight I will only be talking about movies myself, so there will be some more music being played. But that doesn't mean we can't have some fun, and have some fun we will, because tonight we are talking about a very significant series in the history of cinema itself. We are going to be talking about none other than the Alien franchise. Not all of the movies in the franchise, because I am a student without unlimited access to time. But I do at least have 2 extra movies that I did not talk about on Wednesday's show. And so we are going to be going through chronologically, starting with Alien from 1979, followed by Aliens from 1986, Alien 3 from 1992, and then we will jump ahead to Prometheus from 2012 and close out the show with Alien Romulus from 2024. Again, I've skipped over a couple of them because I mainly wanted to watch Prometheus, and I figured if people are listening in now, they'd probably want to hear me talk about not Prometheus, Romulus, which came out last year. They sound weirdly similar because they both end in us. You know what they say, you can't spell something that ends in us without us. That was awful. But here's the point. Tonight's show is going to be a bit shorter than it usually is, again, because I'm just on my own. I don't want to take up too much time. So we'll probably be cutting it off earlier. I will also ask more frequently, for those of you who are listening in, if you have any questions, comments, or I suppose concerns, interesting tidbits here and there, please do text those in to the show. We do, in fact, have a way for you to text in your responses to any questions or any sort of, I suppose, any thoughts you may have on the show while it's just me. And the number to text into is 509-963-2311. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please text in to 509-963-2311. Please do not do this while you are driving. Thank you very much. With that being said, we are going to go into our first mild music break. We'll come back probably after 1 or 2 songs and jump into the original Alien from 1979. So stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Weekends. And for our first movie on tonight's watch list, as it may be, we are going to jump into the original Alien from 1979, which is available to rent from multiple services, including Amazon Prime, YouTube, and other places that you can rent movies from. Not that I don't know all of those sources, more so that there's so many that I always lose track. And it always ping-pongs between being available on one and not on the other. But I can at least guarantee that it is available to watch on Amazon and YouTube through renting. So we're going to leave it at that and jump into the plot summary of the movie itself. For those of you who are somehow unfamiliar with the basic plot summary of Alien from 1979. The basic plot follows the crew of the spaceship Nostromo as they pass by the planet LV-426 in essentially a response to a distress signal coming from a ship located on LV-426. As a couple members of the crew of the Nostromo go on board this ship, giving off the distress signal on the planet LV-426. This is just going to keep looping until I say multiple different compartments of the same thing. It's like at the bottom of the sea, there's a log, and on that log, there's a stick, and on that stick, there is a fish. And you get the idea. Point is, they go inside the ship, they find some eggs, and one of the eggs hatches. A little critter crawls out, attaches itself to the face of one of the crew, and then it detaches itself while they're in the spaceship Nostromo. Rather unfortunately, after that, it has laid an alien egg inside the crew member, and the egg hatches. And now there's an alien on board the Nostromo. That's great, not inconvenient whatsoever. That won't cause horrible disaster to ensue upon all members of the crew. That was not a grammatically correct sentence, what I just said, but it doesn't really matter because you get the point. Nonsense ensues. Point is, I have seen the original Alien twice, and I reviewed it on Wednesday. And my review was definitely conclusive for What to Watch Wednesdays because I felt it was important to talk about some of the weaknesses of the original Alien, which there weren't many, but there were some. And they didn't exactly ruin the movie, but they were things I felt were important to bring up because honestly, there are so many good things about the original Alien that it would have felt kind of redundant to talk about some of the good things about it. At least in a shorter form on What to Watch Wednesdays. Here on What to Watch Weekends, I'm fine with being completely redundant. So we're going to talk about some of the good things having to do with Alien from 1979. One of the big things I really liked about the original movie is the set design. I really like not only the way the ship itself looks, and I mean that in regards to the Nostromo. The way that is structured it makes both sense in my head and is clearly different sets, but all comes together to form one coherent piece, if that makes any sense. It feels more so like a really good sum of all of the parts that make up a whole. Even the more out there parts, some of the, I believe it was like we're just going to call it the heating room because I believe that's what it was anyways. It was the room where the scene Here Kitty 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 took place, right? Where the guy goes after the cat and then gets attacked by the fully grown alien. That room looks a bit weird, but it doesn't look out of place. It looks important to the scene of the alien dropping down from the ceiling while also looking like it fits within the confines of the Nostromo ship itself. So it's got that going for it. Alongside that, there's also the way space itself looks, which technically would be considered set design or graphic design, one of the two. I think the way the planets look in the background looks very, very nice. It looks both dense and uncluttered. Alongside that, you have the design of the alien ship, where they go a bit crazy, but again, doesn't feel, I suppose, cluttered, and kind of conveys the point that they're trying to get across, which is an unsettling feeling, this kind of claustrophobic, dark, horrifying atmosphere, without it feeling like too much, like overbearing, because it's supposed to be suspenseful, I suppose. Maybe it is overbearing, but it's also more suspense, I suppose. It's more suspensefully engaging to me personally than it is physically overbearing. When I think of physically overbearing, I tend to think of more industrial areas with a lot of heavy machinery. And the alien spacecraft itself is not really focused on that. It's a lot more about that sense of claustrophobia and that feeling of the darkness containing the unknown, which in turn, I guess, enhances the sense of suspense. I'm getting very philosophical so very early, but I think I'm getting the point across that all of the sets look really good and get their points across really well. So that's a heavy plus for the original Alien. Alongside that, we can't really talk about the ships themselves without the people that are in the ships, both the Nostromo and the alien ship. The crew size of the original Alien is really good. I like how many people there are because it has this quote unquote problem, what I'll instead call a quirk. I'll call it a quirk in that it seems like a lot of people at the beginning, and then near the end, when multiple people have died and Ripley is just left with two other members of her crew, including the AI, but that's not a person. So two other human members of her crew. I suddenly took a step back and realized, hey, there's only three people left. That's when I took a step back and realized it. And this was in the last act of the movie, when it was kind of abundantly clear that they weren't going to win against the alien. There was no beating this thing. They just had to escape it. And for being a quirk, that's a really good quirk to have, that you only realize that they don't have enough people to win when it is confirmed that they will not win. It works hand in hand with each other. And I really liked that. I really liked how that sort of came as a sudden surprise when I finally realized it. Because it's kind of like, it's essentially, you either realize they're not going to win against the alien and then you figure out, oh, there's only 3 people left. Or you go, hey, there's only 3 people left. And then you realize, oh, they're not going to beat the alien. Either way, both of them complement each other perfectly. So that's, again, why it's not a problem and more so a quirk of the crew size. Moving on from that, I think one thing I've wanted to mention about both the ship for the aliens and the aliens themselves, one thing I don't think I fully emphasized on is that I don't find xenomorphs scary in the context of the alien movies. I find them unsettling. I find them disgusting, and I find them definitely an established threat. But and I should actually clarify, not in the series as a whole. In the original Alien movie from 1979, I do not find the core alien itself scary so much as I find it disgusting and not super fun to look at. And just kind of whenever it jumps out at you, rather than an That's a very onomatopoeic way of saying how I actually feel about this. But it's more of a feeling of disgust and kind of a reactionary reaction rather than a one out of fear, right? And that extends to the ship itself as well, because both the ship and the alien itself are inspired by the works of H.R. Geiger, which I don't know a whole lot about H.R. Geiger, but from watching Alien, I know for a fact that he has a very particular style of art that's very centered around anatomy. We're going to call it that. He's very anatomically focused. And I've been told before that contributes to the horror of Alien, specifically the original. The way the ship looks and the way the alien functions and the way a lot of the alien devices look is supposed to enhance that feeling of dread and that feeling of, I guess, alien atmosphere and terrain, but then in turn upping the suspense, right? And rewatching the movie, I found myself very disgusted looking at the inner workings of the ship and the way the alien looked with that perspective. But I still can't decide if that perspective was given to me or I came to it on my own conclusion, right? Because if I was told, well, the anatomical stuff is what makes it suspenseful, then I might look at the anatomical stuff and go, okay, that's supposed to be suspenseful, and I'm kind of subconsciously just forcing myself to find it suspenseful, rather than actually noticing the anatomical stuff and thinking that doesn't really, I don't like the way that blends thematically and the way that's making me feel right now. I don't know if it's genuine or inserted subconsciously, right? If that makes any sense. I don't want it to kind of veer like I'm undecided on it yet. I'm leaning towards it being inserted because I've just been told that's how I'm supposed to feel. But at the same time, I don't want to discredit the way it looks and the designs of H.R. Geiger himself to be seen as they aren't unsettling from that perspective to a lot of other people without there needing to be the influence. So I'll leave it there and just kind of ask you if you think they're unsettling for that reason, or if you think they're unsettling for any other reasons. Before we go to a quick break, I wanted to bring up something really funny that happened while I was watching the original Alien. Before I get into this, I want to give a huge shout out to my roommate, Vlad. I don't know if you're listening to this, Vlad, but huge shout out to you. Thanks for watching Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3 with me. When we were watching the original Alien, we got to the end of the movie. And this is the most significant thing that happened during our little marathon. That's the reason I'm bringing it up now. While we were watching the original Alien, there's a big jump scare near the end of the movie where Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, the main character, is in the escape pod and she's blasting away from the Nostromo. All of her crewmates are dead and she's basically fully confirmed. I'm away. I'm safe now. And in the background, there is a certain shape in the ship, some part of the ship. I believe it's like the equipment area of the escape pod, the navigational system. And it's essentially revealed to be the alien. Not essentially, it's revealed to be the alien. The xenomorph has snuck on board the ship with her, and its hand flops out, and then it starts to roar. And it's this big, whoa, oh no moment wherein you realize Ripley is not safe whatsoever, and she has not escaped. So now that I've kind of spoiled that for you. Going into this movie, Vlad had never seen the original Alien before. And when we got to that moment in the movie, he's sitting there and he's looking at the screen. And I'm sitting there in this extremely tense sort of, I suppose, tightening of my muscles, thinking, I remember the jump scare happening. I don't remember where the alien is hidden. I don't remember what the xenomorph it looks like, which part of the ship it's blending into. So we get to like 5 seconds before the big jump. And Vlad goes, hey, that bulge looks kind of like the... And the moment he says that, the hand flops out, which scares me directly because I noticed it, but by then I was like, okay, now I know where it is. When does it happen? When am I going to get my 5-second warning? As it turns out, the 5-second warning is Vlad going, hey, that looks like the... And as the hand flops out, his reaction is to yell at the top of his lungs, no way! I was jumping up in my seat from how startled I was, but I burst out laughing at that. And this is not a slight at Vlad whatsoever. If you're listening, that made it 10 times better of an experience. That made it so much better. That made that moment stick out to me infinitely more than it did the first time. And that was the thing that I took away from the first movie when I first watched it multiple years ago. So the fact that you've now made that moment stick out even more in my mind is awesome. So thank you, Vlad. Again, I don't know if you're listening, but thank you profusely. Alongside that, I want to say that as much as I don't find the xenomorph scary, Vlad also brought up the fact that there's the video game Alien Isolation, where you're in first person and running away from the xenomorph. I then remembered that I'd played Alien Isolation before, and it was the most horrifying thing I think I've ever experienced. I played it for about 15 minutes, yelled, turned it off, uninstalled it, and never played it again. So I kind of ate my words for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But in the context of the original movie, I do not find the xenomorphs all that scary, which is why I had to correct it, because in the context of the franchise itself, xenomorphs can definitely be pretty scary. And a movie that does a good job of that, while also balancing it out and kind of elevating the original idea a bit more, will be the next movie on our list tonight. That being Aliens from 1986. Before we go to music break, if you all have any opinions on the Alien franchise, specifically the first movie, please text in your thoughts, opinions, or any sort of questions you have to 509-963-2311. That's 509-963-2311. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Weekends. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we are going to be taking a quick look, or a look more so, at Aliens from 1986, which is available to watch on places such as YouTube and Amazon through renting. For the basic plot summary of Aliens from 1986, we follow Ellen Ripley 57 years after the events of the original Alien, in which she is the only survivor out of her crew of the Nostromo after the alien got on board and killed her entire crew. Although I should mention that she is the only human survivor. The cat Jonesy survived. So that counts. Jonesy is the best character in Alien, and he is the best character for the first 30 minutes of Aliens. I love Jonesy so very much because he's an adorable little kitty cat and does not die. So, alongside Jonesy, Ellen Ripley wakes up 57 years after her crew has died and is brought back to the planet LV-426 to serve as a consultant to a bunch of military brutes as they storm a colony on board the planet in order to essentially figure out why have we lost contact with the colony on LV-426, just as a woman who visited LV-426 and had an alien destroy her crew after visiting this planet. Why are those two things connected? Why did one happen just after we got the other thing happening? So that's the basic plot summary of it. And the spoiler is that there's aliens on board LV-426. This time a lot more than just one. A lot more, because the movie is called Aliens, and if it's called Aliens, you'd think there'd be more aliens in it. Shocker, there's a lot more aliens in there. So they achieved that goal at the very least. All right, so enough of the waffling about. Let me cut to one of the biggest standout features to me about Aliens. One thing I feel I should have done a better or more thorough job on explaining during What to Watch Wednesdays, this last Wednesday, is Newt specifically. For those of you who are unaware, if you've seen the poster for Aliens, Newt is the girl that Ripley is carrying around with her as she holds the two weapons in her hand. Newt is this little girl who lives in the colony, and they end up rescuing her because she is the only human survivor. The rest of the humans have been wiped out by the aliens, and they basically rescue her. She's this damaged little girl who can't speak for at least the first 10 minutes she's on screen, and then she starts talking. And from there, it just gets actually a lot more sad. It was sad when she couldn't talk and was running away. When she starts talking, it gets a lot more sad. Here's one thing I think I should emphasize right now, and it's something that I hold very true when watching any movie of any form. No matter what genre it is, there's a very big difference between good child acting and bad child acting. And when I say that, I mean that normal standard child acting is, in my opinion, bad. I was about to say considered. In my opinion, it is bad. I don't think there is really a middle ground for children who are actors. Either they are really good at conveying emotions of a human being and of a character, or they are unfortunately just children who can't really act because they are very young and have not experienced enough in their life to truly portray the full range of human emotions and end up either being whiny or annoying or grating in some way, shape, or form. I'll give you a really good example from another movie directed by the exact same director of Aliens, James Cameron. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I do not like John Connor because he's a bit squealy, kind of grating, and a little bit annoying. Newt from Aliens, another James Cameron movie. I almost said John Carpenter for some reason, but another James Cameron movie is the complete opposite. She is really good at portraying this person who has been through a lot. And notice I said person, not child. She is in fact still a child, but I think emotionally she is a lot more older in her head than some of the adults, some of the military brutes that are on the planet with her. Unfortunately, it also just kind of resulted in this sort of mind-melting moment where my expectations were blown completely out of the water when I saw a small child say, "I have seen real monsters, and it makes me believe that my doll isn't a real person anymore." And I'm like, my heart is melting now. Thanks a lot. Thanks a whole lot. I like to think that I'm not as soft as I really am, but then I hear something like that, and I'm like, that is so incredibly sad. And I'm like, that this is what's so fun about emotions. They tend to just crop up when you don't want them to. So that's great. Newt's a really well-performed character, and I heavily applaud it. I can see why she's on the poster. She deserves every bit of recognition she's ever gotten for that role. I also think It's interesting that I brought up the comparison between her and John Carter in Terminator 2 because, like Terminator 2, I think Aliens succeeds at making Ripley more interesting as well. Kind of like Sarah Connor in Terminator versus Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I think that one of the biggest advantages of making a sequel to a movie, especially one that you may not have expected there to be success, and then it turns out to be like a big franchise. Terminator and Alien are both in that sort of boat. When you go from movie 1 to movie 2, you have a chance to expand on the psychology of the main character. And if it's a good movie, it tends to do that. It tends to show them in a weaker place and having to overcome bigger barriers because of that weaker place, right? In the case of Terminator 2, we've got Sarah Connor needing to deal with the liquid Terminator, which is a lot more horrifying than just a normal Terminator. And in Aliens, we have Ellen Ripley needing to have to deal with multiple aliens 57 years after her crew is dead. So there's no way to get any help whatsoever. People don't really know who she is. She's in a completely foreign world. And after going back to LV-426, she must now cope with hoping to save a young girl who is very, very, very damaged by her surroundings. So it adds stakes to it. It really does add a heavier emotional stake to the whole thing. And I think that makes Ripley's character a lot more interesting. It's a lot more fun to watch her and, I suppose, relate to her. She's a better character in Aliens than she is in Alien, in my opinion. And that's partially my opinion, but I think she's a lot more well-rounded and achieves a lot more because she's thrown a lot more is thrown at her to overcome. So it's got that going for it. Another thing that it throws at the audience that the original Alien, in my opinion, again, did not exactly achieve perfectly, was making the aliens super scary. Let me tell you right now, I ate my words completely when I saw the alien queen. During the third act of Aliens, the Ripley meets the alien queen. And it's disgusting. It's so gross. It's so unsettling. It's given me shudders just thinking about the thing. It's horrifying. Quite horrifying. Very threatening. I cannot get it out of my head, some of the things I saw. And that's a compliment in this case, but it doesn't mean that I'll ever forget it. So, yay. I'll admit it. I think that Aliens is really good for what it is. I've said that it achieves more than the original Alien. I think it does, but if I were asked to narrow down all the specific things, all the specific details of it, we'd be here for a lot longer than I'd want to be talking about it. And honestly, I think it's kind of a more subconscious, innate feeling that Aliens is better than the original Alien. And some people will probably disagree with that, but I personally liked Aliens a lot more than the original Alien, and I liked the original Alien a lot. So that says something. I think it was better constructed. It had less rough edges and sanded it down into a very, very nice piece that didn't have a lot of hiccups in it. I will say the first time I tried watching it, for some reason, the first 3 minutes were the hiccup for me. And I was like, I don't like James Cameron. And I don't know why. I think I was just being very whiny and annoying at the time. Because honestly, I just kind of like to rag on James Cameron for no apparent reason whatsoever. He did a good job. Everyone in this movie did a very good job. That includes the cast, that includes the crew, especially lighting and editing and sound and music people. Like, there was so much talent put on display here. And for being an action movie from the 80s, it's still a really good horror flick with a lot of existential questions thrown in it. I really just can't emphasize how good it is, and by extension, how much I wish I could say more about it. But it would kind of come off across as shallow and me repeating myself. So instead, we're going to have to jump to break now, because as much as I like Aliens, there is a movie on this list tonight that I do not particularly like. And that will be the one that we will be talking about next, which will be Alien 3 from 1993. If you're interested in hearing my opinion on that, stick around. Before we go to break, if you have any opinions on aliens, please do text them in to 50996. Wait, let me check what the number is. Let's see, 509-963-2311. That's 509-963-2311. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Weekends. And for our third movie on the watch list tonight, we are going to be taking a look at Alien 3 from 1993, available to watch now on places such as Amazon Prime and YouTube through renting. For the basic plot summary of Alien 3, we follow up with Ellen Ripley. The only reason I hesitated while saying that is because we follow up sometime after the events of Aliens from 1986, although I'm not exactly sure how long it has been since the events of Alien from 1986 to Alien 3 from 1993. So sometime after Aliens, we follow Ripley as her space pod or her escape pod crash lands on the planet Fiorina Fury 161. On the planet Fury, which is a planet with a prison on it. The prison is filled with only men. There's a very small amount of people in this prison, and she is brought on, and her head is shaved, and she is in the prison now. And there's a alien on board her escape pod. Why? Because they don't really explain it. They just kind of say it was there with her and Newt. And oh yeah, Newt is dead. Newt is dead now. She dies in the beginning of the movie while they are in the cryopods, the frozen sleep chambers. Yes, the freezing sleep chambers. The alien leaks acid and kills Newt, and the only other not dead Marine from Aliens also ends up dying, and the AI, what's his name? He was interesting, but what was his name? I remember what his name was. Bishop the AI dies as well, technically speaking. But he does come back later in Alien 3, but it's kind of set up that he's dead. And so everybody except Ripley is dead yet again, except this time it's frustrating because they're killed kind of off screen and at the very beginning as a direct follow-up from Aliens. So that's great. Okay. The reason it seems like I'm waffling is because I have to get to the part of the review that for some reason I feel like is going to be controversial. And I don't know why. Because I feel like this should be a lot more universal than it is, personally. But for whatever reason, there's definitely people out there who like Alien 3. People who enjoy the movie and think it is good. People who will tell you, don't worry. All of the critiques are coming from people who just really liked the first two, and they don't like seeing new things done with a series. They don't like seeing original ideas anymore. And they're just mad at the beginning where they killed off Newt, and people just can't get over that. Let me address those directly and start off by saying this. Before I get into my critiques of Alien 3, yes, the opening scene of Alien 3 is very frustrating because they kill off Newt, Hicks, and Bishop, three characters that we cared about from Aliens. That's not the only problem with Alien 3. Yes, the CGI xenomorph looks very bad. That is not the only problem with Alien 3. Yes, the script of Alien 3 is held together by scotch tape and string and little pieces of wood. I don't even want to say popsicle sticks because honestly I think it's more shavings of balsa wood. You know how thin balsa wood is? It's extremely thin. So I'm saying it's held together by shavings of that. Yes, all of these things are very true about Alien 3, but if you try to bring them up people will probably react and say that that's a narrow-minded way of looking at the movie, and that I'm not actually appreciating the movie for what it is and what it tries to do. So now that I've gotten those things out of the way obligatorily, that was not a word, but I made it up anyways. Now that I have fulfilled my obligation to say the cliche thing that every reviewer has said, let me talk about the two big reasons I do not like Alien 3. The first is going to go against everything these people who like the movie will say. I don't like the side characters. Any of the male prisoners in this prison are uninteresting to me. That includes pretty much all of them. I believe on Wednesday I said that some of them are forgettable, some of them are inconsequential, and some of them are boring. At the very least, not one of them, none of the prisoners are all three of those things at once. But it also has the severe problem of if they are one of those things, they are only one of those things. I will give you good examples. First off, we have this religious guy. I'm going to call him the religious guy because I couldn't be bothered writing down his name because I personally did not care about the character enough to remember his name or read his name or write it down. So his name is the religious guy. He is vaguely religious. That's his character trait. He is inconsequential. Cool. We have... I kind of wish that he was so bland and generic, but he's so strangely opposed to being the generic religious guy. He doesn't just read from the Bible. He reads from like the Bible, but then makes up his own verses and his own anecdotes or something. And it's like, it's trying to be unique, but it kind of compounds on itself to being even more blandly boring than it would have been originally. Again, I said blandly boring, but it doesn't feel wrong to say that. So we've got him. Cool. Then we've got the doctor. So the doctor, he is killed off at an awkward time. He's just randomly killed off, and it's kind of forgettable. I forgot he was in the movie for the rest of it. I don't even think he mattered all that much. So technically he's inconsequential as well, and he's not forgettable, but and then I can't say that none of them were all three of them at the same time. So if I had to pick, I'd call him forgettable because he wasn't inconsequential. He pushed the story forward, but in a way that we'll get into when we get to reason 2. So this is still reason 1, keep in mind. I have a lot of prongs to this. The third example is this crazy prisoner who, again, I'm not going to mention his name. Just remember that at the end of the movie, when Ripley and the prisoners are trying to fight against the alien, this guy pours hot lead on top of the alien. And then he moves the crane over so that Ripley can fall into the burning lead. Cool. He's there. He is, I think he's the forgettable one. Or no. Inconsequential, forgettable, or boring. What was the third thing? I already forgot what the third thing was. See, they're so inconsequential, forgettable, and boring that I forgot what the actual third descriptor was, that this crazy guy falls into that category. It's actually making my brain hurt to try to remember parts of Alien 3, and it's imploding on itself. So I got to hurry up and get to part 2 of why I don't like the movie before I just can't remember anything anymore, like what my name is or why I'm here or what I'm even doing anymore. So here's reason 2 that I don't like Alien 3. Okay? And I feel like I've provided a good enough example. You know what I'm talking about. None of these characters matter to me. Now, the character who does matter to me is Ellen Ripley, Sigourney Weaver's character. And Alien 3 does a really good job of destroying Ellen Ripley. The Ellen Ripley in Alien 3 is not the one from Aliens or Alien. Now, again, people who like this movie will say, oh, you're just way too hung up on Alien and Aliens having a specific type of Ellen Ripley. You're just not open to the new explorations of her character. And to that I say, Ellen Ripley would not engage in adult relations with the doctor that is trying to help her. She would tell him that there's an alien. She would not avoid telling him that there might be an alien on board her spacecraft. She would not try to make sure of it. She wouldn't be like, oh, I have to make 100% sure by doing an autopsy on Newt's dead body. No. she would be screaming at people, there is an alien. She wouldn't tell the warden halfway through the movie in the most inconsequential off-screen way. She would tell him immediately. That's the way her character functions. She is very good at voicing herself in the moment. That is how she is written. And the fact that in Alien 3, she goes from that to, I'm going to dodge the question entirely and never answer it for him and essentially let him die and engage in some unsavory actions with this man to avoid answering said question, infuriates me. It also just like, it compounds when she's basically late to everything. When in Aliens, she was on top of everything, and in Alien, she was punished for being late for everything, which is kind of the whole point of the movie. If you're too late to figure out what's going on with your crew members, then it's like understandable from that perspective. But in Alien 3, she already knows that there's an alien. So she's way too late at explaining everything and telling people, hey, there's an alien, and hey, we should fight against it. She's way too late at rallying the other prisoners to fight against the alien. If anything, it's just like, oh, now I have to rally people. That's great. It's like, you're not, I get that you're not a natural born leader, but the Ripley I know would not take this long to get around to doing it. She only does it at the halfway point of the last act. Okay? That was infuriating. It was so infuriating to watch Ellen Ripley act at all over the course of Alien 3. Nothing she did felt like the character we came to know. I get it that you want to take the movies in a new direction, but again, you have an established character that you have audiences attached to, especially after the very good Aliens, where we have an extension of her personality and her relationship with other people. And then you basically just throw that all out the window in an extreme act of defenestration, which is a real world word that means to throw things out the window. You basically throw her character out the window and say, no, she is a manipulative, impatient, annoying, indecisive loser. Cool. That's great. Great decision there. It's so infuriating to have that be the case and then watch as the only thing Ripley does that feels in character for her over the course of the last 3 movies is at the end of the movie when she jumps into a pile of burning lead in order to avoid giving away herself to Weyland-Yutani, the corporation, because she finds out that she has an alien inside of her. The queen alien is now inside of her and will hatch eventually. So as a final act of defiance, she jumps into a pool of burning lead to die. That is the Ellen Ripley I know, and it's her dying. What a great way to work with your character that you have established, guys. Again, round of applause. Round of applause. It frustrated me to no end. I just was sitting there going, if you're going to have Ripley be like this, could you just not remove her? I just didn't want her to be in the movie by the end of it. And then when she wasn't in the movie anymore, I was like, man, that's great. No, it's not. I'm still unhappy about it. That was a waste. I think the only thing I really want to bring up is the fact that any twists or any expansions on the story that Alien 3 brought to the table went over my head because of how frustrated I was watching it because of those 2 core factors. And the other ones that I mentioned earlier, they're still important, even though people will try to say that, oh, that's just because you're a fan of Aliens and Alien. Yes, I'm a fan of Aliens and Alien. And I don't watch Alien 3 because I want them to ruin the story between Aliens and Alien 3. I watched Alien 3 because I liked the stories of Alien and Aliens. And I think they could expand on it. That's why you watch the sequel. And they didn't do it. They regressed dramatically. So that's great. I feel like I'm kind of whining here, and if I were to go any further, I'd get a lot more angry, even than how I got on Wednesday. I got really mad on Wednesday. So we're going to cut off the Alien 3 review right there. Before we go to break, I should also mention that I call it Alien Cubed. But before we go to our actual music break, I also want to mention that if you have any opinions on Alien 3, and if you are one of the few people who really likes the movie, or I shouldn't say few, one of the people who likes Alien 3, then I highly recommend texting in at 509-963-2311. That's 509-963-2311. 88.1 The Burg, Euro Movie Central. Welcome back to What to Watch Weekends. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Weekends. And for our fourth and maybe fifth, we'll see if I combine both of these together, but we're going to be talking about the next movie on our watch list tonight. That being Prometheus from 2012. The next movie in the Alien franchise after Alien 3. That's a lie. No, it's not. That's a joke. So, before we get into Prometheus, I wanted to say that after watching Alien 3, and not particularly enjoying Alien 3, I was going to watch Alien Resurrection, the fourth movie. And I was going to, and then I decided I didn't want to, kind of arbitrarily. So I was sitting around going, I don't want to watch it because I didn't think it would interest me, and frankly, I didn't want to take away my limited amount of time to watch Resurrection when instead I could watch Prometheus and or the newest Alien movie, that being Romulus, which came out last year. I figured Romulus would be more interesting to talk about. It's a bit more fresh in people's minds, and some people have already kind of mentioned to me before and said it was pretty good. So I figured it would be more interesting to talk about that one alongside Prometheus, because I've always wanted to watch Prometheus. So it basically came down to the wire of I have to skip one of these. Which one am I going to skip? And I skipped Resurrection sort of arbitrarily. And I went back and looked at it, and I was like, for fun, I'll look at what the plot summary of this is. Let's see what this plot is centered around. So I like to read to you now the basic plot according to Wikipedia. And by that I mean the first sentence and a half kind of the plot of Resurrection, or more so just the first full sentence, because I didn't read after that. I stopped after reading the first sentence. You'll find out what my reaction is after I read it. So again, this is pulled directly from the plot summary of Alien Resurrection on Wikipedia. 200 years after the events of Alien 3, military scientists aboard the space vessel USM Auriga create a clone of Ellen Ripley, designated Ripley 8, using DNA from blood samples taken before her death. And just like that, I'm out. I'm not wasting my time. After reading that, I was so done. I was not interested in the slightest in watching Alien Resurrection. The fact that you had to go as far as to make a clone of Ellen Ripley after she dies in Alien 3, and then have the audacity to call it not Ripley 8. I don't want to know the reason that you're calling it Ripley 8. If it's because you've tried cloning her multiple times, I don't want to know the answer to that. And if it's for any other reason, I still don't want to know. I would rather not spend my time watching that movie. So, what did I spend my time watching? Well, interesting you asked that, because I spent my time watching Prometheus from 2012. If I'm being completely honest with you, I don't think I made the perfect choice, but I had to suffer more than watching Alien 3 at some point over the course of this marathon, and suffer I did. So, Prometheus from 2012, which is available to rent from places such as Amazon and YouTube yet again. For the basic plot summary of Prometheus from 2012, we follow two scientists, that being Shaw and Holloway, who discover cave paintings from ancient civilizations, disparately assorted across the globe, as in different time periods and different locations across the globe, have made cave paintings. On these cave paintings are tall people who point at the stars and they're pointing at the same stars in all of the cave paintings. So what do Shaw and Holloway do? Why, they go talk to Wayland, the owner of Wayland-Yutani Incorporated, and ask him, hey, can we go to the star system that the tall people are pointing at in the hieroglyphics? And Wayland's like, yes, I have $1 trillion to give you. Here you go. How about you go on a 3-year expedition to go to that planet before I die, and I want you to find the secret to eternal life, finding these tall people. And so they go off and they reach the planet, and they find the tall people and the secret to eternal life. And Wayland is not dead and he wants to be eternal. And then there's a robot who I forget his name, even though I watched it recently, who's trying so hard to be Lawrence from Lawrence of Arabia, and it's a wonderful mishmash of just a lot of ideas happening on screen, and none of it's sticking at all. I'm gonna be fully honest here. Oh, I forgot to mention, the tall people made humans. I'm not joking when I mention any of this. I'm doing the best I can to not just break down into a million pieces, trying to explain to you what the basic idea and premise behind Prometheus is. And I can't do, I'm struggling, as you can probably tell. Not because it's difficult to say, but because it's stupid. And I didn't like the movie all that much, so it's not exactly bringing me happiness. So much fun. I really wish I was making up anything I just said, but I'm gonna level with you here for a second. I was excited to watch Prometheus until I started watching Prometheus. I thought it would be interesting, and it caught my interest initially. But when I got about 20 minutes in, when I got 20 minutes in, I was still on board. After that first 20-minute stretch, I started noticing a lot of problems with it. And a good litmus test I always put a movie through is if I can take a break halfway through and come back, and when I come back to that movie, more so, I can pick up almost exactly where I left off. It's a weird litmus test, but it's because I'm a college student and have homework to do and can get distracted very easily. When I have stuff going on in the background, and sometimes I just pause the movie halfway through and go off and do something else. Maybe I take a bathroom break, or I go and check social media for a little bit. Sure, everybody does it. It's a whole thing. We're all addicted to our phones anyways, so you get the point. Maybe I go and look up something about the movie. The point is that when I come back to the movie, I tend to want to be able to jump right back in and not have there be any problems whatsoever. Prometheus, I think, is one of the first times where I have taken a break halfway through, come back, and honestly felt like I'm watching a completely different movie from the first half. When in reality, they are the same convoluted, nonsensical string of nothing. And yet it still feels like a completely different movie. It's a very weird phenomenon in which it still sucks, but it's like it's sucking for different reasons. The first half feels so incredibly forced and unsuspenseful that I just had no attachment to anything going on, with no connection to the pacing or the way it was progressing. It just felt so all over the place. During the second half of the movie, it felt a lot more scattershot in terms of genre, because it was going from a horror sci-fi movie to a way overzealous action movie with no rules whatsoever, and really unfortunate set pieces that just didn't add anything to what I was watching. I'm kind of scattershot, but it's kind of just imagine me talking like this, and imagine that in the form of a movie, right? That's kind of what it feels like to sit through Prometheus, except with less style than even how I'm talking right now. That's what it felt like. And I was severely disappointed by that, because I was expecting it to be the hidden gem, the thing that people were wrong about. And it just kind of backfired and resulted in a not so fun experience. That was just me venting all in one go. I could break it down for you even more, but I think the main reason I just didn't like Prometheus is it felt so detached from all the movies that came before it. And having said that, I haven't watched Resurrections, but it felt so removed from even Alien 3. Alien 3, for all of its faults, for all of the reasons I do not like it, on its core principle is about them having to fight an alien. And the basic idea of having to fight an alien is rooted in the idea that going out into space to explore can sometimes lead to problematic issues. And science itself is not perfect, and the humans behind science are not perfect, and if they go too far, they go too far, and could result in a bunch of human death. That is the basic idea of the Alien franchise, to me at least. And Alien 3 at least encapsulates that somewhat. It at least has an alien that results in people dying. Prometheus, on the other hand, is more focused on we are scientists and we should go and find the thing. Let's go find the thing that we want to find. For the first half at the very least, and it is not punished in any way, shape, or form up until when it becomes convenient for the filmmakers to punish them. When they go exploring in the original Alien, you know what happens? They almost immediately get punished by a face hugger grabbing onto one of the members of the crew. In Prometheus, it's like, we are now on our 3-year expedition, and we're in charge of everything now, and we're going to go here and find the thing, and we need to find all the reasons for us being alive again. And it's shut up. Get attacked for once and learn your lesson. You can't go out into the cold, desolate, non-existent embrace of space and expect to find something that will further human existence. All you're going to find is nothing. Why haven't you learned this by now? I'm rambling, but it's like, what's your logic for going out into the cold embrace of space to find the thing? We saw it on cave paintings. I'm abandoning ship the moment you tell me that's the reason you're going out into space, to find the ancestor to human existence. We found it on cave paintings. Yeah. And I found my reason for, I don't know, changing the course of my college career on a rock. The reason I haven't changed the course of my college career is because I didn't find it painted on a rock. And I also am more logical than that. Do you get what I'm saying? You don't just find paintings and go, let's go into space to find the thing. It frustrates me to no end. Let me paint it out for you so I'm not just rambling over and over again. In 2001, A Space Odyssey, for all its faults and all the reasons I do not like that movie, which it's not a lot compared to Prometheus, 2001, A Space Odyssey is centered around the monolith and the misunderstanding of the monolith. When we have Dave and his co-pilot and HAL 9000 talking about the monolith, which they're not talking about the monolith, but when HAL, the computer, turns on Dave and says, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't open the pod bay doors. Dave's reaction is, why can't you do that? And his situation is centered around the AI betraying him because of the monolith. The AI itself is the instigator. Dave, on the other hand, does not know why he's going out to look for the monolith. He is just sent out there because it is his job. And when he finds the monolith, he suffers horrible consequences, gets thrown through the crazy portal, and ends up dying and turning into a cosmic baby. That is 2001: A Space Odyssey. The basic idea I'm trying to get at is that Dave is the victim. In the original Alien, Ripley is the victim. In Aliens, Ripley is still the victim. Newt is the victim. Everybody is the victim. In Prometheus, the scientists are not a victim of an alien or a monolith or some unseen force that they had nothing to do with and just discovered. They are the victim of their own stupidity and their own blindness into thinking that they can actually achieve something going out on a 3-year expedition to find the ancestor to humanity. And the reason they get away with it is because someone gives them $1 trillion. it frustrates me to see a movie series centered around people being the victim of something they have no control over, which is what makes a story interesting to watch and watch people grapple with, when in reality, it is the cause of human stupidity. Now then, now that I've rambled a bunch, I'm done with Prometheus. I'm so done with Prometheus. I was never going to watch Alien Covenant anyways. So might as well skip ahead past Covenant and talk about something that will give me a much better mood as we move into our last little segment here and before we call the show for the night. After watching Prometheus, I needed a cleanser, so I sat down and watched Alien Romulus from 2024, which is available to rent on places like Amazon and YouTube. It came out last year and is a sort of midquel set between Alien and Aliens. So, for the basic plot summary of Alien Romulus, we follow a group of teenagers, young adults, as they live on a mining colony, I believe called Jackson, and they find a ship up in their atmosphere that is a Weyland-Yutani, what's the way for it? Yes, a Weyland-Yutani base, and they go up there and explore because they want to find the cryo chambers, the freezing pods, so that they can go to a different planet, away from the mining colony and escape. Makes sense to me. Mining colonies tend to suck in sci-fi movies, so they go up to the ship, and they unfortunately find an alien. Wow, it's called Alien Romulus, and it's got an alien in it. Crazy. So, I will admit that overall, I really liked Alien Romulus. I think it is worth watching, personally. I think the sound design is really good. For it being set in space, it's one of the only movies I have seen wherein when you're outside in space, when the camera itself is out in space, every other sound is muffled. I get that that's kind of a minor thing, but it's nice to hear it when it happens. I don't even remember if Gravity, the movie, did it. Don't fact check me on that. I'm not positive that it didn't happen in Gravity, but Star Wars never did it. And well, it did in the Holdo maneuver, but that's a isolated example. I don't remember that being a standout feature of Star Wars movies or the other Alien movies for that matter. So from that perspective, I think Alien Romulus achieves doing something different that I wasn't expecting. Alongside of that, they have very good horror elements. The color is really nice. The set designs are really good. All of it's just kind of back to basics, and it feels both original and like a pure-blooded reference to the original movies, with a lot of elements such as quotes, basic ideas, things like the face huggers, and other elements thrown in there. There's even stuff from Prometheus near the end there. And because of all of that, it kind of pains me to say that I do have one major nitpick with the movie, aside from all of my praises for it. And that is the fact that they recreated Ian Holm, I believe. They remade Ash, the AI from the original movie, by using AI and reanimating him back to life as a kind of nostalgia bait thing. And I didn't like that part of the movie at all. I do not think they should have done that. That was absolutely a bad decision, in my opinion, at the very least. It added nothing aside from nostalgia. And even then, now I'm sad because I realized that Ian Holm is no longer with us. Rather unfortunate. Alongside that, I think that it could be seen as a bit of a fan service movie, and it's not exactly as deep as some of the other ones. And it's more of a kind of enjoyable thrill ride rather than a deep exploration of the human psyche like the original Alien was. Or more so, it just doesn't have as many moving parts. It's a lot more stripped back, even in comparison to Aliens. It's kind of trying to mesh all elements from all movies into one. And it works, but it means more so that they don't have time to emphasize the parts from Alien and then emphasize the parts from Aliens and the part from Alien 3 and the parts from Prometheus individually. They're kind of spaced out and not given enough time to grow and flourish. So it's not inspired by one specific movie in the series as a reboot, right? or midquel, whatever. It feels kind of like a reboot, and I thought it was a reboot when I saw the trailer for it. So it's got that. Aside from those criticisms, I personally would recommend Alien Romulus. I had a fun time with it, and it was pretty scary, especially near the end. So it gets a high recommend thumbs up from me. And if you think it has too much fan service, let me point something out. If you are a fan of something and you're complaining about fan service, why are you a fan of something? What's not fun about having fan service when you are a fan? Anyways, that's all for What to Watch Weekends tonight. Thank you all for tuning in to hear me talk about the Alien movies. Next week, I believe this upcoming Saturday will be the next episode of What to Watch Weekends here on 88.1 The Burg at 8 p.m., as it always is. This Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. will be the next episode of What to Watch Wednesdays as well here on 88.1 The Burg, so be sure to tune in to that. If you're interested in keeping up with What to Watch Wednesdays or What to Watch Weekends, please follow the Instagram account or the YouTube channel at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces. Again, I will be on this Wednesday telling you all what to watch. So have a nice night, and oh look, there's an alien. I don't know. I didn't have anything else as an intro. So goodbye.